So, here we are, talking about Thanos, and why I feel, I guess, incredibly disappointed in his character, just kind of in general, as apart from the character that I really grew to love and respect from the comic books. Which I guess is an interesting thing to say, because a lot of people seem to really like Thanos in general. They didn't really like Thanos in Endgame, and we'll chat about that in a little bit, but a lot of people were really big fans of Thanos in Infinity War. And I saw lots of different videos of people praising Thanos. There's one video in particular that comes to mind that I just always found to be hilarious, called I think "Why Thanos Deserved to Win" or something like that. Lots of different video essays talking about just how great this character Thanos was. And for me, Thanos was never really a character I could totally empathize with at all. It's not even a character I can really even understand when it comes to his motivations, and just kind of why he always felt very off to me. And he felt off to me for such a long time, and I wanted to talk about Thanos for seriously a year, but I just didn't really know how to put it into words or articulate what was so off about Thanos to me until I watched this one video by this YouTube channel called Trope Talk, I think, or the show is called Trope Talks, where basically this lady will explain different tropes and give examples and just kind of explain different storytelling elements. And I really like her channel, and she made this video talking about pure evil characters, and she made a point of making Thanos an example of how he's a very inconsistent one, and she put it in such a succinct manner that it just kind of clicked with me, and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly how I've been feeling, but I could never articulate. So I'll play this clip for you, and hopefully she'll let me. Hopefully, this fits under fair use, and I'll show you what she said, and then we'll take the video from there.
I don't really want to tear into Thanos here, but he spends most of Infinity War being written like a complex villain rather than a pure evil one. A noble monster who doesn't want to wipe out half the universe but feels he has to in order to save it. But then there's little moments that make no sense if that's what they're going for. If Thanos is a reluctant monster, why'd he kill Loki so tortuously or have such an obvious blast fighting the Hulk? And why did he kill all the dwarves of Nidavellir and mutilate Eitri? What part of that was perfectly balanced, smart guy? Sometimes they write him as evil and loving it, and sometimes they write him as a tormented paragon, the tragic hero of his own story. But those characters don't fit together. Also, his whole plan was stupid, and they should have stuck with the comics' motivation of trying to bone the thoroughly uninterested personification of death. Anyone who thinks that wouldn't make a scary villain has clearly never dealt with r/incel. But Thanos is clearly intended to be a complex antagonist, and his little moments of pure evil come across as disruptively out of character rather than his real character shining through.
So after watching that, like I said, everything finally made a lot of sense to me. So now here I am to talk more in detail about how I feel about Thanos. And the way I'm going to make this video is, first I'm going to talk about why his motivations make no sense to me. Second, I'm going to talk about his powers and his abilities, because that also seems pretty strange or inconsistent, or nerfed, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then I'll end the video off by saying what I would have liked to see, and that'll probably be the shortest section. So the first thing I want to talk about are Thanos' motivations and his logic and his rationality. So if I can understand Thanos' plan, his plan was to gather all 6 of the Infinity Stones and then to wipe out half of all life in the universe. The reason why is because the universe's resources, as he puts it, are finite. And because they're finite, people are going to end up using and burning all of these resources at some point, and thus, in order to save the universe from its impending starvation, we cull half of the existing population so the universe, or the rest of the people here, can thrive. Now, I imagine that the reason why Thanos thinks that this is a reasonable plan to enact is because it would have made sense on his home world, Titan. Okay, maybe it would. And this is my first problem with Thanos, because he does tell the brief story of Titan to Doctor Strange, but he doesn't really go into detail about what exactly was going on with Planet Titan and why specifically this had to be the solution.
Where do you think he brought you?
Let me guess. Your home?
It was. And it was beautiful. Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around. And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
Congratulations, you're a prophet
I'm a survivor.
who wants to murder trillions.
With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
And then what?
I finally rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe. The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Why he had to cull all of these people rather than relocate them to another planet that had more resources, or relocate half the planet, or anything, or what exactly were the resources that were scarce and being used up anyway. In fact, if we go off the comic book lore, he was the people who lived on a planet Titan were eternals, and thus they were immortal anyway. They were beyond the pale of humanity to begin with, so I don't see what resources they really needed anyway if they're immortal. I mean, maybe they would starve forever, but they certainly wouldn't die. So maybe he's not immortal here in this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, fine, but even still, my question is, what resources were missing, or what was happening? Like, I guess there was food, there's a food shortage, something was happening, and he felt that culling the population would solve it. Now, of course, there's 2 really big problems here. Problem number 1 is, well, Earth doesn't have the same problem that Titan has. In fact, I don't know if anywhere else in the entire universe has the same problem that Titan has. Now, maybe it does. Maybe in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, resources are limited, but at no point in any film ever in the whole 10 years or 11 years Marvel's making movies, limited resources has never been a factor or never been an issue. And especially not on planet Earth to the capacity where the planet is going to be destroyed at some point in time through mass starvation. So Thanos applying his logic to an environment where that's not even a problem seems, dare I say, kind of stupid or very ill-conceived, and him applying this logic to any other situation apart from the one that happened on Titan seems really silly and just totally irrational. Now, of course, the answer to that would be Thanos is indeed considered the Mad Titan. He is supposed to be crazy. And maybe what they were going for is that Thanos' ego was so strong that his entire plan is more of just him going about saying that he was right. It's more Thanos is just purely driven by his ego, and is the whole wipe out half the universe thing is just one big I told you so. I told you guys, if you just would have followed my plan, everything would have been fine. Maybe that's what they were trying to go for with Thanos, that he's just actually incredibly egotistical, and his plan is not one of rationality, is not one that really even makes any sort of sense or can even be applied as a solution to any problem that's currently happening, even though those problems aren't currently happening, which we've seen. Maybe it's just this is all just one big I told you so. The only problem with that is the portrayal of Thanos and the way he talks and his mannerisms. Because every action and every movement Thanos makes is one of a very regretful person, or one of someone who doesn't really want to do what he's doing. Everything that he even says all kind of sounds like he's doing this begrudgingly, not really because he wants to do it. So he can't be a character that's driven by his ego to prove that he's right, because his entire character, his actions and mannerisms express a character that is sorrowful and is sad and doesn't really want to do it at all. So he's not driven by his ego, but he's driven by some form of responsibility or some misguided form of heroicism that he thinks he has. A lot of people say that he's the hero of his own story, or he believes that, he is the hero here and he's doing the right thing to save the rest of the world. Perhaps that's the case. But the only issue there that lies is that if this is the type of character that Thanos is, he can't be a character driven by his ego, because his ego is showing us that he actually really doesn't want to partake in these actions. But it doesn't work for him to be a regretful hero that doesn't really want to partake in his actions, because we consistently see Thanos do some heinous things that honestly can't be explained if he's just some guy that doesn't want to do what he's doing. Because, need I remind you, my friends, at the beginning of Infinity War, Thanos killed a bunch of Asgardians who literally just escaped the destruction of their home planet. And this is also the same guy that threw his daughter off of a cliff. And this is the same guy that strangled Loki in cold blood. Well, I mean, Loki did try to stab him, but he still strangled him, I mean, nonetheless. So, let's take stock, shall we? If you say that Thanos is an insane madman that's not really thinking rationally, and he's just purely driven by his ego to prove the whole solar system, well, I mean the whole universe, that he was right about his plan and his resources, it doesn't work because his portrayal is one of a man who is regretful and one of a man who is only doing this out of a sense of misguided responsibility. But that doesn't work because he consistently takes evil actions that are not conducive to his plan and actually are not necessary and don't even need to be done. He didn't need to kill the Asgardians to get the Tesseract. He didn't need to kill Loki after he got the Space Stone, but he straight up strangled him. I feel... Maybe I'll say this for the portion of what I would have liked to see and more... kind of keep going in how I say that this character doesn't really seem very consistent. On the one hand, he's supposed to be thoughtful and he's supposed to be rational. But on the other hand, he's supposed to be a madman. He's supposed to be crazy. And I get that element there. But on the other hand, he's also supposed to be regretful and kind of sad and doesn't really want to do this, except when he does. Like when he wants to fight the Hulk in one-on-one combat. You know, this wasn't a sad man who was, you know, fighting this creature he didn't really want to do anything about. But he seemed to be having fun. So what is Thanos supposed to be? Is he supposed to be the hero of his own tale that is misguided in his actions? Or is he supposed to be an egotistical villain that just wants to prove that he's right and that his plan will be successful? Because what's even more inconsistent, or even stranger still, is then when we get into Endgame, where the Thanos from the past comes and he fights the heroes from the present, where he says, you know, I thought by eliminating half of life that everyone would be thankful. So, which again plays to the part where he's egotistical, where he wants people to praise him for what he's done in his efforts, or he wants people, I guess, to be happy and thrive, which is strange. But it seems really weird to me that, like, no one ever seemed, at no point did it even occur to him that people would be upset at the fact that they just lost their families, and people just randomly died, that anyone could be happy about that. But he's an incredibly thoughtful person, so how could he have missed that people would be sad about that, or that people wouldn't try to fight back or stop him? It just seems kind of strange to me. I guess, again, you could chalk that up to the whole, maybe he's supposed to be egotistical, but again, if he is, then why is he so regretful, and why is he so sad, and why does he act like he doesn't want to do this, if he's being driven by his ego and how great he is? I mean, it just doesn't feel like the two personalities match. They feel kind of, I'm not going to say bipolar, but they seem diametrically opposed to one another. So it just doesn't really seem to kind of work very well to me. Another thing that I forgot to include, but now I'm including here now, that I feel kind of totally undercuts the rationality or even the complexity of Thanos that they did in Infinity War, was in Endgame, when Cap, Thor, and Iron Man had the face-off with Thanos. He explained that he decided he's gonna make some directorial edits to his grand plan, where instead of eliminating half of all life, he's going to destroy all of it and recreate it in his own image. And this just looked, I mean, once again, they're trying to play Thanos off as a pure evil villain that has just totally lost the pale of his mind, you know, the Mad Titan. But at the same time, it's a complete contradiction to the rationale that he had before, and it still doesn't make any sense in context, because now this is implying that Thanos again wants to be appreciated for his efforts, or he wants the universe to be thankful for what he's done. So it's playing on his ego again, but he doesn't seem to be the reluctant mastermind or the reluctant hero he was before. You see what I'm saying here? I mean, also another thing that just kind of seemed like just left field to me is the fact that if I understand correctly, it was only all of 8 or 10 people that went back in time and collected the Infinity Stones and undid Thanos' plan. So to me, it just seems a little overreacting from Thanos' point of view. to remake the whole of the universe because 10 people stood against him. It seems to me all he really had to do was just kill the Avengers, and then that's that. Everything would be hunky-dory, because apparently only the Avengers were actually the only ones who went out to undo what he did. So it just seems totally beyond the pale and just kind of a little out of character, honestly, for his grand motivation to change so rapidly in the 0 hour, to be like, I'm going to destroy the whole universe. It seems to me that they were just trying to up the ante when they really didn't need to, at least in my opinion. So what's really strange to me is, what I don't really understand is, why did this whole humanitarian Thanos even need to come into existence? That's kind of weird to me, because I honestly thought, especially with the end credit scene that we got from the first Avengers movie, which was something like this.
To challenge them is to court death.
I honestly thought that we were just gonna go with the Mistress Death route. And maybe the reason why we didn't go with the Mistress Death motivation is because the personification of death would be a very powerful force in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that would just kind of be beyond the pale of what our human characters can really deal with. So maybe that's why she was written out. But I also think a huge reason why she was kind of written out was not really so much to avoid the incel route, because I don't really think that really even played a hand into the writing. But I do feel like a lot of people probably would have gone into calling Thanos a bit of an incel if that was the way they went. So I don't know if that really played into it, if they wanted to create a character that they thought would be more complex, and that was clear and obvious that they're trying to make Thanos a complex and thoughtful villain, but it just seems really inconsistent for all the other reasons that I said. I honestly thought that the Mistress Death route just would have been simple and more classical and would have made more sense, honestly, especially when it comes to why he specifically wants half of the universe gone. Because if you think for all of 2 seconds, right, if Thanos, which is strange to me that no one thought this, but let's say Thanos does wipe out half of the universe, right? What exactly is stopping the rest of, or the remaining half of the universe, from using the resources at double the rate now that they're in surplus? Nothing. So his grand plan has solved nothing. I mean, granted, the people would thrive, yeah, but the resources are finite, so they would still be burned at some point. And even then, if everyone made a conjoined effort to just replace the generation that just was lost via, having sex and having children, which could be done. Like, I mean, if everyone got on board, yeah, it can be done. In 20 years, all Thanos' entire plan has just been thwarted again. And he can't do anything because he destroyed the Infinity Stone, so good on you, brother. So maybe it's just my fault for thinking too hard. I don't know. But it just seems like the plan itself just doesn't make any sense and isn't functional. What I think would have made more sense as motivation if they just kept it simple. They wanted to impress Mistress Death. And there's like a whole backstory to Thanos and Mistress Death and why he's so obsessed with death and all of that they could have played into. There's a lot that goes into it that I'm not going to go into in today's video. But I will say it does seem to me that invoking the Mistress would have just been too powerful. And maybe they wanted to ground Thanos and make him, more on the level that the heroes can, I guess, contest with, with the exception of Captain Marvel. But we already chatted about her. So yeah, maybe that's what it was. And I think, I guess I have a bit of a suspicion that maybe they're trying to avoid the Thanos incel route. I don't know when they were writing the movie that was a thing and they were afraid of that. I don't think so. I really don't, but it could be. I do feel like it would have been it's pretty easy to say that. But I don't even see, I think some people I've seen some people say that they think the Mistress Death route of Thanos wouldn't have made any sense. And I totally disagree. For one, it's definitely a motivation a lot of men can understand from a purely, normal dating interaction. Like, lots of men try their best to approve prove themselves great to women. Thanos, on the other hand, is a guy who was dejected and rejected for most of his life. The only person accepting him for a while is Mistress Death. Now, of course, she was, using him to her own ends, but he, of course, didn't see that at the time. So, I mean, creating a character like that definitely could have been very sympathetic. I think definitely could have been very, satisfying and villainous and scary and sympathetic and complex. But his whole humanitarian plan of wiping out half the universe to save the universe from its resources was just strange to me. The whole point of wiping out half of the universe, in the story originally, was as a huge appeasement to Mistress Death. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna kill a whole bunch of people to appease you, my friend. You're my lover, right? And another thing that was really weird to me. And maybe this is more like just kind of a story element thing and just like in Infinity War and Endgame in general. But it was the whole like snap thing was very romanticized and very critical. And that's really strange to me, right? Because originally the whole point of the snapping motion or snapping out half of, the universe's population was it was a power move with a simple motion, right? The whole point of snapping is that it's really easy to do. But the magnitude of the effect with the Infinity Gauntlet is astronomical. It's universal. And that's what made it thematically such a terrifying force. But when you make the whole story revolve, when you make so much effort in snapping, like when the Hulk had to just try to snap, it was like, when it's such an effort to snap, it kind of undermines what makes snapping the Infinity Gauntlet so terrifying. It's the fact that the motion is so easy and the effects are so devastating is what gives it gravitas and what gives it, its thematic weight. When it becomes a really difficult thing to do, then it's like, it kind of loses what makes it so scary, at least in my opinion. So when snapping becomes a really hard, if, whatever the motion is, if it's a really difficult thing to do, then, the magnitude or the whole point of it is lost, I feel. So I don't really like how the whole story revolved around getting Thanos to snap. I feel like that was more fan service than it really was, them thematically thinking about what snapping represented in the original story when they were adapting it. But that's just the thought that I had. I feel like this was the best time to bring it up. So moving forward, this kind of brings me to Thanos' power set, right? Because this is really strange to me. Thanos almost got clapped by Scarlet Witch. And then he almost got clapped by Captain Marvel. But Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America were getting clapped by Thanos. And then when Doctor Strange and Iron Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man fought Thanos, they caught him and they almost were able to defeat him there too. The problem that I'm really having with Thanos here is that Thanos isn't really strong on his own. He's only as strong as the stones make him. And I think that severely undercuts the threat of Thanos, okay? Because Thanos in the comic books is a very cunning individual. He was a super genius tactician, okay? And more than that, he also, which is really strange to me, he also upgraded his own body with a lot of different cybernetics, which is part of the reason why Nebula had so much cybernetics. Like Thanos, he did it to himself too. I don't know what the extent was, I don't remember it, but I know that he could blast his own energy beams as well. Like he had his own powers and abilities, and more than anything, he was a very, very intelligent creature. He was a tactician more than anything else. And I feel like this character element of Thanos was completely lost when all of his powers is just his skin is really hard and he's strong enough to fight the Hulk. That's basically what Thanos can do by himself. He's not really the intelligent tactician who could defeat nigh anyone that challenges him. And I feel like one of the biggest missed opportunities with Thanos that disappointed me was back in Infinity War when they almost got the gauntlet off Thanos, and instead of us seeing Thanos fight without the gauntlet, which I think would have been an amazing scene if we actually got to see Thanos thinking critically and defeating the heroes without the gauntlet to show us who the real threat here is. Instead, we got Peter Quill stopping them in the most cliched scene ever. Stopping them the moment these heroes almost have victory. They get snatched away because someone is too emotional. I felt like that was totally unnecessary. Not because Peter Quill did the most cliche thing ever, but more so because that could have been an opportunity to show us just how cunning and how much of a tactician Thanos is by himself. How much of a threat Thanos is by himself. Because as far as the movies go, Thanos is only a problem because he has the Infinity Stones. That's kind of it. So it's not really Thanos that's the issue, it's the Infinity Stones. You get rid of them, Thanos can get clapped by anyone. And that just kind of, for me, severely undercuts the threat that he was. Because let's take Darkseid, for example, right? Darkseid is always looking for the anti-life equation in the DC universe, right? But he doesn't need the anti-life equation, right? Superman and Darkseid go back and forth. But Darkseid cannot be clapped by anyone except for Superman can't even clap Darkseid, okay? Like, that is definitely one of Superman's most powerful, physically and, like, intelligent foes ever, okay? There's nothing external to Darkseid that makes him such a threat. And if DC were to ever get their shit together and make a good Darkseid movie, or make a good, cinematic universe that builds the Darkseid, you guys could see that, but I oftentimes always compare Thanos and Darkseid together because of how similar they are, even though there are lots of different differences too. But I'm using Darkseid as an example to show you guys that him by himself challenges Superman. It's not Darkseid plus XYZ. It's just Darkseid's own power is enough to challenge, Kal-El. But with Thanos, it's just the Infinity Stones. It's just the Infinity Gauntlets. It's just that. The Hulk could probably take on Thanos without the Space Zone, really, realistically. And I feel like that really undermines his character quite a bit. So I guess, in conclusion, to talk about what would I have liked to see with Thanos? Well, for one, I would have definitely liked to see, in the end, not have Thanos killed at the beginning of Endgame, and instead have Thanos actually confront the heroes he's damaged, and, like, not have this huge, like, battle and army, but to have, like, our heroes actually have to fight Thanos himself. I think for me specifically, I would have kind of revolved everything around the Time Stone. If I could rewrite Endgame, everything would revolve around getting the Time Stone and, like, reversing the Gauntlet, or just kind of that. If I had to rewrite Endgame, that's for me. It would just be getting the Time Stone, and then we can solve everything with just that alone. But I would have liked more a personal confrontation with Thanos and the people he's wronged, versus Thanos from the past coming forward and them killing him. Because I feel like a lot of the emotional weight is lost, or a lot of the emotional catharsis is lost, when it's someone that didn't actually do the horrible things. Now, it's true, Thanos was still a genocidal maniac back in 2014. I get it. But, there's a moment where Scarlet Witch is like, you took everything from me. And he's like, I don't even know who you are. Yeah, that's weak. Like, the reason why fight scenes mean anything is not the cool spectacles of the powers and the abilities that the heroes are using, even though that can be cool, but it's what they're fighting for. It's what they're trying to avenge. It's what they're trying to protect. And maybe for Scarlet Witch, it might feel really good to mess this Thanos up, but he's not the guy who killed Vision. The guy who killed Vision died, 5 years ago. He's gone. And so the emotional weight, or the emotional comeuppance that comes from defeating that foe, is totally lost because they didn't actually do the bad thing. And I feel like, I would have definitely made it so that in the end, the Avengers, it wouldn't have been a grand war again. It would have been the Avengers all fighting a super powerful Thanos that was intelligent and more of a tactician in his own right. Maybe you didn't have to do the Mistress Death storyline. Maybe she's just too strong for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fine. But I do think that Thanos' motivations are ill-conceived, and he's very inconsistent. He's not egotistical enough to be driven purely by his ego, but he's not somber and regretful enough to only be someone that doesn't want to be taking his actions, because he clearly does seem totally fine with murdering a bunch of people, especially refugees that just escaped the destruction of their own planet. He's totally fine with doing that, but he just really doesn't want to do this, man. He's the only one who can, and it's like, yeah, dude, but you just strangled a guy to death. And it's like, you can't tell me this isn't really what you want to do. I feel that if they wanted to, I feel like they should have committed, I think, because it seemed like building up to Infinity War and Endgame, it seems like they were building up to the egotistical god tier Thanos, right? Big blue guy in his armor who just feels too good about himself. And then they tried to combine that egotism with this somber, thoughtful, complex guy who's the hero of his own tale. He doesn't really want to do this, but it's like, if you actually analyze his actions, he seems to be clearly invested in wanting to do this, and he wants people to like the fact that he did it. So again, it's really strange. Like, does he want to do this or does he not want to do this? And if he doesn't want to do this, why does he want people to appreciate him? If he doesn't want to do this, why does he want people to appreciate him? I don't get it. You know, it's weird. I would have liked to see more of a personal confrontation with Thanos fighting all the Avengers, and they all have to work together to take him down. I feel like that would have been the culmination of all the storytelling, you know, rather than having a giant big CGI battle. Again, that's personally what I would have liked to see. Thanos being the tactician that he is, and they all have to work together to overthrow him because he's just that fucking strong. And that's how Thanos has always been in my mind, and that's why he's always been, bar none, one of my favorite comic book villains of all time. And I do feel a little disappointed that this is the Thanos that we got, which isn't to say that Josh Brolin or did a bad job portraying him. No, the acting was fantastic. I think it was more the writing, you know, the writing direction that just kind of made me feel this isn't really. I don't think this is the best adaptation of Thanos we could have gotten. I feel like I think it could have been done a lot better. So I am certainly interested in seeing your guys' thoughts. This video took me a little while to get out because I was really trying to formulate my thoughts and trying to figure out the best way to put this into words, and hopefully this is the best way. So with that being said, I actually hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, man, go and click the like button. And shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.